following is a production of Cary TV, the Town of Cary's government access channel.
All right, we will call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Board to order. Yes, we are mostly covered in rain. Those of you watching kind of had a sudden shower out there as we were coming in from the parking lot. But we will begin anyways, as soggy as we are, with adopting the agenda. Does anyone have any changes to the agenda to mention? If not, would there be a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
Or actually to adopt. A second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of adopting the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Great, that has passed. We will now look at the regular meeting minutes for our January meeting. We were not here in session in February. We did not have any cases to present. So we will look back at our minutes from 2 months ago. Once again, if someone has any amendments or changes to those minutes, I'd love to hear it. Otherwise, would there be a motion to approve the January minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second? All those in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, say no. That motion also carries unanimously. We have, I believe, 3 cases on the agenda this evening, and we will begin with 17 REZ 13 Weldon Ridge.
Good evening, Board. This is a request to amend the Weldon Ridge Planned Development District. The boundaries of the rezoning are shown here in yellow. They are within the Weldon Ridge PDD, just west of the Chatham County line and adjacent to the American Tobacco Trail. Current uses allowed on the site include a school, church, preschool, daycare, as well as residential uses. The applicant is seeking to move the location of the school and increase the number of residential lots, all within the boundary of the existing site. The site's divided into 2 tracts, S1 and SF6. S1 is a non-residential tract. It allows for a school, church, preschool, and daycare uses. SF6 is a residential tract, which allows for 46 residential units. The applicant is seeking to divide the S1 tract into 2 tracts, S1A and S1B, and shift the tract to front Yates Store Road. The residential tract, SF6, would shift to the north, adjacent to the American Tobacco Trail, and increase the number of units from 46 to 92. Please note that S1B is not part of the rezoning application, and so there will be no changes to its current entitlement. I'd like to take a moment to review the history of the case. As you may have noted, the case number is 17 REZ 13, meaning it was submitted in 2017. With the submittal was a comprehensive land use plan amendment, which was approved in 2017. The Town Council public hearing was held in December of 2017, and at that time there was a significant public concern expressed at the public hearing. The applicant made several changes to the application in 2018, including reducing the student count and revising the traffic study. Due to these changes, the applicant elected to restart the process by going back to the council for an initial public hearing in January of 2019. Since that public hearing, the applicants made a few additional changes, including reducing the residential unit count from 104 to 92 and proposing phasing for the school buildings. With this rezoning, there are proposed zoning conditions. The conditions are associated with each tract. So first, I'll talk about S1A. The proposed land use is school with a maximum number of 1,300 students, maximum building size of 90,000 square feet. They're proposing staggered start times, an on-site carpool lane length of 4,482 linear feet, and proposed phasing of the school buildings. S1B, there are no changes proposed to this tract because, again, S1B is not part of the rezoning application, so it will remain as currently entitled. SF6, the land use that's proposed is detached dwellings. The current land use allowed in SF6 is for detached, attached, patio homes, and zero lot line homes. The proposal for SF6 is 92 units. The current allowed is 46. The proposed minimum lot size is 8,000 square feet. The current allowed lot size is 5,200 square feet. And the proposed buffer next to the American Tobacco Trail will increase from 50 feet to 75 feet with the zoning conditions. Since the case was presented in January of 2019 to the Town Council at the public hearing, the applicant has made the following changes. They've reduced the maximum number of units in the SF6 tract from 104 to 92. They proposed phasing for the school buildings, and they've clarified tract sizes. Additionally, as this case has gone through the rezoning process, there has been state legislation regarding schools and road improvements which impact the site. And I should note that this state legislation applies to all schools that are developed within the state of North Carolina. I'm going to take a few minutes to go through the state legislation and how it impacts this particular case. So before 2017, when schools were proposed, schools would be required to build frontage improvements and access improvements. If a school was going through a rezoning, they could propose conditions for road improvements. Additionally, a level of service for nearby roads could be a basis for denying the rezoning request. In 2017, new state law was passed that noted that schools would still be required to build frontage and access improvements, but now the town or NCDOT must pay for those frontage and access improvements, meaning that whoever owns and maintains the adjacent roads would be responsible for paying for those improvements. So for road improvements made on town roads, the town would pay for those improvements, and road improvements made on NCDOT roads, the state would pay. Conditions were still permissible for road improvements if a site was going through a rezoning case, and the level of service for roads could still be a basis for denying rezoning. In 2018, additional state legislation was passed. It now limits conditioning the approval of cases involved with a rezoning or special use permit. And now cities cannot deny a rezoning case based on the level of service of roads. And so therefore, for this case, we do not have conditions for off-site road improvements, and the council cannot consider the level of service for denying a rezoning. Because the site's located in the Chatham County, the rezoning is evaluated using the guidance of the Imagine Cary Community Plan and also the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan. The land use plan was amended in 2017. It indicates appropriate land uses for the site are office and institutional along Yates Store Road and medium-density residential to the north along the American Tobacco Trail, with a density maximum of 3.31 dwelling units per acre. Staff's analysis notes that the uses align with the locations as recently approved in the Joint Land Use Plan Amendment. The residential use is also proposed, that's proposed as a similar housing type to other housing types within the area. A revised traffic study was completed in August of 2018. It has been reviewed by both the town and NCDOT. A traffic study evaluated 12 intersections within 1 mile of the site boundary. And this study identified deficiencies at the study intersections shown here in orange. The study also identified improvements of the site driveways and internal road intersections within the site. The improvements for the site will be determined at the time of plan review in coordination with both the town and NCDOT. The study also looked at carpool lane lengths. So when looking at a school to evaluate and determine the length of a carpool lane, a school driveway is measured to ensure adequate queuing length to keep school traffic from interrupting nearby roads. The length of the carpool lanes for schools are determined by NCDOT. They use a predictive queuing model to do this. This rezoning proposal provides approximately 3,000 feet of carpool lane length for the middle school and high school, and 1,400 feet of carpool lane length for the K through 5 school, for a total of 4,400 linear feet. NCDOT's Municipal School Transportation Assistance Group has reviewed this proposal and has indicated that the carpool lane lengths proposed are adequate. The applicant has proposed zoning conditions to commit to a minimum of 4,482 linear feet of stacking for the carpool lanes, as well as 30-minute staggered start times. And in addition to the zoning process, there will be opportunities for check-in and enforcement, including NCDOT's driveway permit process and the town's requirement for a traffic management plan, which will be developed and approved as part of the development plan. The rezoning held a neighborhood meeting originally in October of 2017. And as I noted previously, there has been significant citizen involvement and input, as well as concern with this rezoning case. So the applicant has held 2 follow-up neighborhood meetings, as well as multiple meetings with area residents. So in conclusion, staff's analysis finds that the rezoning request is generally consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan, including the Chatham-Cary Joint Land Use Plan. The land use and the density within SF6 are within the guidance of the plan. Additionally, the location of S1A is generally consistent with the guidance of the plan. So this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's here to share comments. And following that, staff is available for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Dry.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Tonight I want to primarily address the history of the rezoning and finish with the compliance with the plan. Weldon Ridge was approved in 2004. The only 2 parcels that have yet to be developed is the S1 and the SF6, which is what you're seeing before you tonight. The S1 site is the school site, and when Weldon Ridge was originally approved, it was a very important component of the plan. It's been difficult to get a school site to locate here, particularly given its location right at the county line of both Chatham and Wake. In 2017, a rezoning was submitted, and due to the fact that it was in the, and still is in the joint Chatham-Cary plan, a land use plan amendment was required because the boundaries of S1 and SF6 had been shifted a little bit. Therefore, with the interlocal agreement between Chatham and Cary, there needed to be a land use plan amendment, and both Chatham and Cary had to approve that in order for the rezoning to move forward. Went to the Board of Commissioners, the vote was unanimous, went to the Cary Council, the vote was unanimous, and then the land use plan amendment, when it came before the Planning and Zoning Board at the time, that was unanimous also. The note that staff referred to for the density was MDR and 3.1 units per acre. Before the adoption, the density was low density, but with the adoption of the plan, it became MDR at 3.3 units per acre. The rezoning was submitted, which totally complies with the plan. Actually, the configuration of the 2 sites, the S1A and the SF6, mirrors the rezoning that has been submitted. As staff pointed out, we're proposing 92 single-family units. That has been reduced since the public hearing. The density is 2.56 units per acre now versus 5 units per acre. Originally, SF6 allowed for a mixture of residential uses. Smallest lots could be 5,200 square feet. With this amendment, they're now 8,000 square foot minimum. When we started the process, we also went back through, this was something that we were asked to look at. We looked at the number of units that were originally approved in Weldon Ridge and those units that were actually built or at least approved with development plans. And going back through that, with the reduction to the number of units being proposed today, the net increase of units over the entire Weldon Ridge is only 11. Again, the original Weldon Ridge had a school site. We're proposing a school site here with roughly, well, it's 1,300 students, whereas the approved school now allows 2,000. The site for this school is a maximum of 90,000 square feet. It also is for K through 12, which was what was in the original Weldon Ridge PDD. One of the reasons the site was shifted for the school was to have better access and traffic patterns. The site is now, for the school, is located adjacent to Yates Store Road, closer to the thoroughfare, which, looking at traffic patterns, would take more of the traffic off the local and collector residential streets. We're also planning an access to and from New Hope Church Road, which was not part of the original PDD. Again, as staff pointed out, we are in compliance with the Cary Community Plan. There are the chapters that we comply with, the Life, Work, Shape, and Move chapters. Again, it was necessary to amend the Chatham Plan in order to move forward. Our rezoning request is in compliance with that plan. In fact, the issue with density was a concern. We've actually gone below what the density could be, and again, we have increased the lot size to be more consistent with what is out in that area today. In conclusion, the role of the Planning and Zoning Board is to review the request to determine if it is consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. The proposed rezoning clearly meets the testimony of consistency with the community plan. And I thank you for the opportunity to address the board, and we ask for the board's recommendation of approval. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll begin, as we usually do, with any questions we might have for the staff and the applicant. I'll start on my left this evening.
I've got a couple. Appreciate the info you gave. I think you answered one of them. So right now, if we don't change anything, we could build a school with 2,000 students. Max.
That's correct. There is a current entitlement for school, church, daycare, and preschool on this site.
Okay. If approved, would S1B in its current state be allowed to build another school later?
It could, yes.
Okay.
So S1B is not part of the rezoning application, so the entitlements are not changing on S1B. So they could build a church or a school or preschool, daycare, any of the allowed uses on S1B.
Okay. And one last one. The carpool lane, is it one continuous line of 4,482 feet, or are they two separate?
I believe the way they have the preliminary design would be separate. Yeah, this may be better for the applicant to speak to it. Would you like to talk? Well, I'll invite one of the applicant's team members to come up. You're welcome to come.
Hi, my name's Michael Roach. I'm with Thales Academy. In our proposed site plan, we actually do have 2 lanes. The total linear feet is over 4,000 linear feet, and that does take place in 2 lanes. So it's not 8,000, it's maybe 2,000, 2,000. It's not direct.
Gotcha. I may not have phrased my question correctly. What I'm getting at is at 4,400, you get about 300 cars in there. I'm wondering, is it all in one area, or is it one area for middle school, one area for high school?
It's separated out. The requirements are less. Each school is much less than that. There's going to be at least a half an hour delay between the K-5 and the junior high school. There's multiple lanes in. So, no, it's not just one lane in, and then if the junior high gets there an hour early, they're going to block everything. No, there's multiple ways in, and each school has enough of their own lanes to qualify, or to meet DOT's recommendations.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
And to add, so when it was studied, it was broken down into, the different schools. Well, there's the upper school, the lower school, but each one had a different parameter to evaluate it by. So holistically, as staff pointed out, it is satisfactory.
Okay.
And just to build on that, when the development plan, if this is approved and the development plan were to come in, the town of Cary requires a traffic management plan to be turned in association with the development plan that would look at, those start times. And DOT has a division that also looks at the queuing of schools, so they would be evaluating this as well, just to make sure that it meets our criteria.
Okay. That's it.
Is that it?
So I saw that there were a whole list of proposed traffic improvements, and you've talked about the fact that this law has changed that means that they can't make any of those conditions, is what I understand, as a part of the rezoning request or approval. So when do those things get sorted out?
So they would be determined at the time of plan review. So a traffic study was still a requirement of the rezoning. However, because of the state legislation, there are no off-site road improvements associated with the rezoning. So we still looked at the proposal and included the analysis in the rezoning staff report, but the actual determination of what improvements are going to go in will occur in coordination with the town and NCDOT, and that would happen at the time of development plan review, if this is approved.
Okay, that's all I have.
Chuck?
Is Yates Store Road a state-maintained road?
I'm going to ask someone from Transportation Facilities to assist with that question.
Good evening. Priyatham Khanna with Transportation. Yates Store Road will ultimately be NCDOT road. The portion of that road along the side frontage is currently under town maintenance, but ultimately it'll be NCDOT maintained.
Okay, so it's county now, and it will be.
It is town maintained
town.
right now. Yeah.
So who ends up making the improvements on that?
So it depends on the timing of the development plan. When the development plan comes in, and if there are improvements with their first phase, then we may have to end up paying for those improvements. But if we're able to make the exchange and then give the road to NCDOT, then DOT would be obligated to pay for those improvements.
Is that it? Moving right along.
Good evening, Mr. Aya. I have one question for you. Regarding the proposed PDD you actually have on the screen right now, it looks like the 75-foot type A buffer extends into the S1A area, but in the zoning conditions it's only shown as the SF6. Does that additional buffer also cover the S1A?
Give me just a moment. Let me
Sure.
make sure I answer that question correctly. Yes, the 75-foot buffer that's proposed would apply to both tracks.
To both, okay.
Yes.
That's it. Steve?
So just want to follow up on an earlier comment. The area, the S1B, the list of things that can go there, if any of those were going to be proposed, we wouldn't see that. The town council wouldn't have to approve as long as it matched that list.
That's correct. It would go directly to a development plan, and it would not have to go through the rezoning process because it has a current entitlement to allow for those uses.
So really that whole, the S1A, the S1B, that is all going to be potentially developed into either the school or daycares or whatever.
Yes, institutional uses.
I apologize. Did you say S1B or A in the end?
I said both, so.
Okay, so S1A,
Is
and
the-
this is a good time to clarify it because I spoke to Ms. Dry earlier today or sent her an email. The request for S1A, which is the one that's being considered tonight, it initially had, when it was all S1, had school, daycare, preschool, and church. With this amendment, the only thing that can go into S1A is a school, and I told staff that I would make it clear, and if we need to tighten up the language, we will. It will be one entity, or whatever the right word is. It will be like one school. There may be two buildings, like an upper school and a lower school, or however you want to call them, but it would be one school. Currently, on the approved S1, you could have all of those, but on the S1A, all those other uses are gone. You can't have a church, you can't have a daycare or a preschool. You can only have the K through 12.
Okay, while you're there then, SF6, how many additional homes are proposed from the previous? How many, what's the
So what I did is I went through and it's been a while since we were asked to do it, which was the very beginning of the process, actually during the land use plan amendment part. I went and added up all the tracts within Weldon Ridge, because basically everything had been either built or there was one section that was approved, I think, for 11 or 12 lots. So I just included all of them because I think all of them were going to be built, and added those up. And then with the help of GIS, I then got a hold of all the development plans for all the residential parcels within Weldon Ridge. And now the number is 11 because it went down from 104 to, make sure I tell you right, went down from 104 to 96. So that meant 11 net from what was originally approved. And then again, with the current SF6, it was 5 units per acre. Of course, the acreage is less with the original one, or the one that's there now, but the lots could be 5,200 square feet for single family detached, but it also allowed 0 lot line patio homes and not townhomes, but it allowed different types of single family. Now we're just proposing detached residential, minimum 8,000 square feet.
Okay.
That was probably longer than I needed.
No, that was helpful. But the point is, when you pick this piece of property, and I know it's difficult, it's a difficult probably piece to work with, you kind of knew what you were getting when you got it.
If I may, as just a point of clarification, just to directly answer your question, SF6 currently is entitled for 46 units, so they're proposing to increase that to 92 units.
Okay.
So it would go from 46 to 92, an increase of 46 units total.
Okay. I'm good, thanks.
Good evening. Couple of questions. One is, I see it on the slide here, so to answer my question about the 75-foot buffer, it's going to be upgraded to a type A buffer, or when it comes, the zoning condition is that it'll be a type A buffer when the development's
correct.
completed? Okay, yes. All right. Can you go back? I think it was the slide 21 maybe. Help me understand, this is the road issue is a little bit of interest. What is it that's going to happen at review? You said that, I think they're going to be looking at the traffic management plans. So help me understand, what is it beyond the looking at the traffic management plans? I mean, is there anything that is going to happen as a result? I read through the study that was done, and what I'm seeing is that there's lots of recommendations. None of it's going to be done by the developer, and that there'll be a traffic management plan to look at how cars are coming. Are we talking about the town taking on light synchronization, whatever? I mean, Yates Mill Road is it's a work in process for anybody who's driven it enough.
Just to clarify, yes, the applicant is not committing to any of those recommended improvements because we cannot take those improvements during the rezoning process. They have proposed a zoning condition to phase the project first with 450 students and then following up with additional students. So we're assuming the first plan would be coming in for 450 students. Again, we don't know what school that would be. Once that comes in, we will have a requirement for a traffic management plan, which essentially looks at the egress and ingress of the site and any turn lane improvements right at the entrances. We can require those improvements, but the town would have to reimburse the developer for those improvements if those improvements are on town roads. Similarly, NCDOT also reviews the development plan, and if they feel there are certain improvements that are needed, they will require the developer to build those improvements, and NCDOT would have to reimburse them for those improvements.
Okay. And kind of following up on that one point, and it may be a difficult question to answer, and you can punt on it if you want to. But given what I see out in Yates Mill Road, and you have Montvale that's now, now the road goes all the way through. And it's still somewhat of a piecemeal, and I understand our approaches as property developers will be required. I mean, what's the possibility that DOT could say, we're not going to take on that mess out there until the town brings it up to our standards? And I guess maybe this is maybe just a rhetorical question, but so we have a developer that's wants to develop this piece of land, but all the road improvements are totally on the taxpayers, whether it be for private purposes, whether it be a school or homes or whatever. I mean, is that a possibility where DOT would simply say, when the road's up to our standards, we'll take it over, but it's all on the town of Cary's dime? Be blunt about it.
I'll try to answer at least a part of that question. NCDOT doesn't really have a future road section for Yates Store Road. What we have in our long-range plan is a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare, and NCDOT kind of honors that. And at this point, the existing Yates Store Road is pretty close to a 4-lane section, and the piece that Montvale is extending would be a 2-lane section due to stream buffers and other reasons. And that road would be built to NCDOT standards and will connect to East Ferrell Road. And so once that is open, they should not be having any objections to take over the maintenance of that. Like I was pointing out earlier, if the plan comes in, if the development plan comes in before that happens, then yes, you're right, we would be responsible for reimbursing for the road improvements.
Okay. Thank you. But if I understood what you said earlier, in the early part of your response there, that this is pretty low on DOT's list of roads that they're looking to assume anytime in the near future. So it's really going to be the town of Cary's road for a while, or but at least the upgrades have to be done to DOT standards?
Yeah, we periodically look at road swapping. Any of the minor roads that have properties on both sides of the road in the town, we take over from NCDOT and we give them the major roads because they would like to control the arterials and the thoroughfares that have a lot of daily volumes on them. So Yates Road is one of those roads that they would be willing to take over. It's when it meets the standards or when Montvale finishes constructing it, that would be the time for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Sure. I have one last question, and maybe for either Ms. Dreyer or the applicant. I'm not a civil engineer, nor am I a landscape architect, so I've never played one, but I'm looking at a 92-lot development that has no road access. And so I'm assuming that how are the people who are going to build those roads going to get from one place to the other? Is there going to be basically a road that's going to go through the S1 to the SF6 property? And then I also saw a reference that the SF6 was going to have access to New Hope Church Road.
Yes, I was trying to find a good slide that may help to illustrate that. The applicant has proposed conditions to have access to New Hope Church Road. So the applicant will need to determine how to acquire property to build that access to the north to New Hope Church Road.
All right. Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Yes.
I just have to ask the town attorney this question. If we're unhappy with the increase in the number of housing units going in here and the request is denied, do they have to build the roads as under the original conditions? The original zoning was approved with road improvement conditions.
The original PDD. I think the new state law on schools and road improvements would trump that. So
Even though that was approved before the statute was adopted? Nunc pro tunc?
and I'm not sure there were road conditions in the original PDD.
And Ms. Glover is correct. In the original PDD or PUD, which it was back then, if you go back, the traffic studies that were required back then really weren't traffic studies, and really the only thing that it referred to in the document was the like what would be required adjacent to the property. So there was no like list of, you know, A, B, C, D. So yes.
Okay.
Does anyone else?
Ex post facto, nunc pro tunc.
Take your word for it. Anyone else have any questions of the staff?
I just have one quick question, just to follow up, because I'll make sure I understood correctly. The chart that's got, it's got Yates Mill Road on it, the one that was just up. There's no connection today to New Hope Church Road, correct? The intention would be that you'd have to buy property to get through there, right? Because right now you don't own that.
You are correct. If you go back through from like 2000 and I think it was 3 and 4, Weldon Ridge used to be called Forest Oaks PUD, or now it'd be PDD, but it was Forest Oaks. When the original PDD was approved, there was no access onto New Hope Church Road. The only access really, well, I guess you could have, well, there was really no, access really wasn't considered very much back then. So I'm not sure how access would have been, and they had a little bit of frontage on Yates Store Road. We have committed to that access, and we understand that if approved, then we'll have to come out that way, and in looking at traffic patterns and what's out there today, we feel it's important to be able to have another access out in and out of the property. So, but what you're asking is there is no connection, and if you go back to the original one, which is what there would not be access, I guess, unless they came back and requested it.
And just to clarify, when you use the word committed, you mean that you plan on doing it correct?
Right,
You're
it's
not
a zoning
conditioned-
condition.
There is a zoning condition that you will provide access to? Okay,
Yes, sir.
okay,
I think what staff said, it's up to us how it would happen.
gotcha, okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Yes, there is a zoning condition in place.
Okay.
I'm good now, that helped.
Any other questions for the staff or for the applicant? All right, then would someone have a motion or anything else to discuss beforehand?
I'll move to approve.
Be my guest.
And the only caveat I have is I can rail for about 15 minutes about the state statute that throws the cost of the roads back on us. And I can go on and on and on about it, but I'll just talk to my representatives and the General Assembly about that rather than taking up time here. Other than that, I think overall it's an improvement, and I'm satisfied with the conditions they've put on it.
Would you care to read the motion if you?
Yes, if somebody will tell me what the number is. Okay. I move that the board forward case number 17, REZ 13, and find that it is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
There's a motion to find it consistent. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
I've said enough.
I was just getting comfy.
Just kind of looking forward to the 15-minute rail over there. So I'm going to admit, this really isn't a pretty case. They can't all be pretty. But when we look at, I guess to sum it up, when we look at the joint land use plan and we look at this rezoning and we consider the two together, I think that this definitely aligns better than pre-rezoning. I think the alignment aligns a lot closer to what the plan had called for. I understand there's a lot of concerns regarding traffic, the impact of a lot of cars in that area. Unfortunately, as was discussed through questions here, a school's going to go in there today, or a school's going to go in there post this rezoning. I mean, the end of the story is there's the potential for a school to go in there regardless of what decisions are made. I think the applicant's done a great job of mitigating some of the effects, limiting the size of the school, limiting the number of students, staggering the start times. I think a lot of that's going to go to make it better for the community than what it could be were we not to have a rezoning. I will also say, mainly for the SF6 track, also for the school, I do like the inclusion of the 75-foot type A buffer with the American Tobacco Trail. Definitely with a high-intensity use like a school, I think that additional buffering is really needed there, and I really give them kudos for doing that. But overall, I think this is definitely more consistent than without the rezoning, so therefore I'm in favor of it.
Does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make? And again, if you're going to vote no, I'd love to hear your comments for why you were doing so.
I want to vote no. I really do. But as I go through the community plan, I cannot find a policy statement that I can hang my hat on and basically make my case on. I think that Chuck only wants 15 minutes. I could take, at least that and then some, talking about the General Assembly and what they do to local decision-making. This is a good case of where now the taxpayers are going to be subsidizing private schools. This is what this is, pure and simple. But my bigger problem with it is, and to say that, is that the way the property was zoned before, they could still have almost all this. There's plenty of land to build a school. And the developer could come in and ask for a smaller piece of, having a reapportion of it to build the 92 lots. What's really in my craw, why I really want to vote no, but maybe I should just out of principle, is what the developer's done, in my opinion, is they've shielded themselves from having to spend a single dime on road improvement because they have no frontage. If this was if any of that road housing, that residential had frontage, then the developer would perhaps be on, have to have conditions, and they'd be required to make road improvements. So by moving everything inland, basically being, an island there, they're now off the hook for any road improvement, and that's what sticks in my craw. So that's said. But.
Just a comment. I agree. I've actually have been searching for a way to vote no, to be very honest. But I'm the same. I'm hung up on the plan that we're here to follow. I'm very concerned about access, not the traffic, but the access. Just getting in and out of here. I do feel a lot better listening to the town that they're going to work on this. They're going to work with these folks. I agree with Brian. A school was coming no matter what. It sounds like they're really trying to make it work. Weldon Ridge is fairly dense area, so I really understand concerns that are from there. I think since we're out of the public business, and rightly so, I'm hoping that as we go from here, that'll give even more time for further conversations, and we'll see what it looks like by the time the board gets it, the council rather.
Still got your 15 minutes in the bank if you want.
Well, he was saying the same thing I was going to say. It's just, you know, the statute gets changed, the cost comes back to the town, and the taxpayers pick up the money, and it doesn't even look like DOT is going to be involved. It looks like it's going to be the town of Cary.
Right, that was the point I was trying to get to, is that, you know, it's all going to be on the taxpayers of the town to make the road improvements out there. And, you know, so the taxpayers are subsidizing, you know, private development.
Well, I agree with those comments that have been made as well. The one positive thing I think I saw in this was the fact that there was a lot of response to the community complaints and concerns, and there was efforts made to make some changes to hopefully mitigate some of those issues. But bottom line is that the road situation has to be dealt with, and we will be fighting that. I think it's also bizarre that there's no current access to this other proposed access road. It hasn't materialized yet, and yet we're talking about a lot of concentration of young people as well as residents in this area. So it seems sort of out of character for a normal development situation. Oh, well.
I'm with Dan. I came in expected to vote no, but there's nothing in the plan and our expectation to follow the plan that I could lean towards. So the expectation we follow that, so I'm going to have to say yes.
Well, I guess I'll chime in a little bit on what we've heard a couple folks say. That I want to vote no. I came in here looking to vote no, but I can't be, when I look at this in the confines of how we do business here. We have a charge that we've had for maybe 6 months now of how we're to review cases, and it is it consistent with the comprehensive plan? End of story. Not do we like it, not do we think someone's gaming the system. And to be perfectly honest here, at least in my opinion, nobody's doing anything untoward here. You know, the law is the law as far as who pays for what roads, and the applicants put a plan together, and the roads will be paid for by whomever the law says the roads will be paid for, and no one's being sneaky or sketchy here in this deal. But we got to look at the comprehensive plan. The staff has said to us their recommendation based on consistency with the comprehensive plan, and you've heard now 2 or 3 folks echo that's what we do. We look at the comprehensive plan. We may not like the case. There may be things we wish were different with the application, but we're only asked, is it consistent? Yes or no. That's it. So when I'm asked that question, I concur completely with the staff, and yes, it's consistent. I don't see anything here that's deal breaker enough to be inconsistent. I think you've heard several of the members here say the same thing. So that's just the new way we do things. I'm not saying it's good, I'm not saying it's bad, it's just more compartmentalized. We have a certain charge, council has a certain charge, staff has a certain charge. There's very little overlap between those anymore. We handle our business as it's laid out for us, and I think you're about to see that happen in effect pretty clearly. Does anyone else have anything else they would like to say? If not, would all those in favor of finding 17 REZ 13, I believe, consistent with the comprehensive plan, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. That motion carries unanimously. We're on to our next case, which I believe, as I check my agenda, is 18 REZ 18. Mr. Wilson's with us. Hello.
Good evening. You'll probably be relieved this next case doesn't involve a school. This case is a rezoning request by the Cary Veterinary Specialty Hospital for a 4.08 acre site on Tryon Road for the purpose of expanding their site onto an adjacent parcel. The site's on the south side of Tryon Road, opposite the Wellington Park Shopping Center. Immediately to the south is the Lockmere Village subdivision, and to the west are the Tryon Place Apartments and Southeast Cary Parkway. This aerial offers a more three-dimensional perspective on the mix of uses in this area and highlights the location of the stealth cell tower on the adjoining property to the north. The existing building has parking on 3 sides and does not have circulation around the building. A stub out to the northern side of the building does exist in the top left corner of the site. As far as existing conditions are concerned, there is a stream that runs along the southern property boundary. Upstream of the site, in the vicinity of Vinecrest Court, the town will be constructing some drainage improvements later this year to help address some existing issues that are unrelated to this site. There are no new parks or greenways recommended within or adjacent to the site. A proposed future street side trail is planned along Southeast Cary Parkway about 600 feet west of the site. The community plan's move chapter designates Tryon Road as a 4-lane thoroughfare, and it's already built to its ultimate cross-section. The site's currently served by Go Triangle Route 305 along Tryon Road. In the long term, a future Go Cary route is recommended along Southeast Cary Parkway. The rezoning request includes all 3.4 acres of the existing property owned by the veterinary hospital at 6405 Tryon Road, shaded in magenta here, and it also includes a portion, about 2/3 of an acre, of the adjacent property to the north owned by John Kuhn, which is shaded in blue. The vet hospital intends to purchase this portion of the adjacent Kuhn property to support future expansion, so only the portion inside the yellow boundary is included in the rezoning request. Part of the reason for the odd shape of the expansion area is because the Kuhn property includes an area having a long-term cell tower lease, and the vet hospital has to work around the required setbacks for the tower. In terms of zoning, the existing property is currently zoned office and institutional, and the existing veterinary hospital is allowed by right. The portion of the site that's on the new property is currently zoned residential 40. The site's also located within a mixed-use overlay district and within the Swift Creek Watershed Protection Overlay District. However, no changes to these districts are proposed. The applicants are requesting that the entire new combined site be zoned office and institutional conditional use, and there are 9 proposed conditions. The applicant's proposed conditions address what land uses are permitted on the site. Here is a list of key uses permitted in the O&I district by right or with a special use permit. From the permitted uses, the applicants propose to only allow veterinary hospital or office with indoor kennel and business or professional office as uses. There are several additional conditions that the applicant has also offered with the proposal. In response to neighbor concerns, the applicant has proposed a condition prohibiting trash and recycling pickup at nighttime between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m., and to limit exterior lighting fixtures to a maximum height of 30 feet. The applicant has offered 2 conditions regarding stormwater. The first condition is to fully mitigate peak flow runoff from the 100-year storm for any new development. Normal mitigation would be for up to the 10-year storm. The second condition is that if any stormwater control measure requires a constant pool of water, a fence shall be provided around it for safety. The next condition stipulates that the new area that will be added to the site, which is shown in yellow here, will only be used for parking. A condition has also been offered to limit the future expansion of the building on the existing site. It's important to note that no site plan has been proposed for any expansion as part of this rezoning, and if such a plan is proposed in the future, it will have to meet all LDO requirements, including but not limited to parking and buffer requirements. These requirements also serve to limit the amount of development that can be footprinted on a site. Finally, there are conditions regarding the eastern portion of the site, which is closest to the Lockmere Village subdivision. First, any development in the additional area shall provide a Type A buffer on the eastern side closest to the adjacent neighborhood. This area is shown in red. Second, the 50-foot stream buffer and 30-foot strip of land adjacent to Lockmere Village shall remain undisturbed. This is the area shown in green, and it is currently required to be a Type A buffer. The only exception would be if disturbance is required in this area for a utility line or stormwater outfall. The applicant conducted the required neighborhood meeting on August 1st with 10 neighbors in attendance. Residents expressed concerns about landscape buffers adjacent to Lockmere Village, stormwater runoff, and noise from dumpster garbage collection. The applicant then held a second neighborhood meeting on September the 6th to continue the discussion with the neighbors and develop new zoning conditions to address their concerns. As a result, the applicant added 5 new conditions, and the proposal went from a total of 1 to a total of 6 conditions. At the council public hearing, there were comments and discussion regarding stormwater, lighting, the amount of parking on the site, the nature of the buffer, and whether or not the building could expand in the future. Since the public hearing, the applicant has offered 3 additional zoning conditions. To address stormwater concerns, the applicant has offered to fully mitigate peak flow runoff from the 100-year storm for new development. To address lighting concerns, the applicant's offered to provide a Type A buffer on the eastern side of the additional area. And to address building expansion questions, the applicants proposed to limit any future building expansion to a total of 37,000 square feet on the existing site. The current building is approximately 23,500 square feet, so this would limit future expansion to a maximum of 13,500 square feet. Staff has analyzed the application's conformance with applicable policies in the Imagine Cary Community Plan. We believe there are 2 chapters of the plan that are most closely related to the proposal. The proposal aligns with 2 policies in the work chapter of the plan. As an existing business that was established on this site in 2003 and has operated successfully and grown a clientele in this location over the last 15 years, the proposed rezoning would provide the opportunity for the business to expand in place and remain in Cary. The proposal also aligns with several policies in the shape chapter. As an office, hospital type of use, the site contributes to the overall density and horizontal mix of uses in the greater Wellington and Lockmere area. The site is located strategically close to a major intersection, Tryon Road and Southeast Cary Parkway. The proposal would also facilitate redevelopment and/or infill development through the utilization of a portion of the adjacent undeveloped property. Finally, through LDO required buffers and additional zoning conditions that have been offered, the site seeks to provide appropriate transitions with adjacent land uses. According to the Future Growth Framework map, most of the site is part of an area designated as a commercial center, with a small portion designated as traditional neighborhood. Professional and office uses are appropriate in commercial centers. The plan also indicates that limited amounts of neighborhood-scale office may be appropriate at the edges of traditional neighborhoods. When we summarize these policies in the work and shape chapters and reflect on the Future Growth Framework, we believe that on balance, the applicant's proposal is generally consistent with the Imagine Cary Community Plan. This concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's representative, Jason Earlywine of Withers and Ravenel, is here to offer remarks on behalf of the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, board. My name is Jason Earlywine with Withers Ravenel, and I'm here to represent the property owners. They are here tonight. They flew in to be here for the board meeting. We really don't have much to add. I just wanted to let you know the reason for our rezoning request tonight. The property owners have decided they needed to reconfigure the space within their existing footprint of their building. They wanted to add a few more staff members to accommodate their growing business. And with that business, as you saw in one of those aerial views, the parking already is very limited. And so they need to expand the parking to accommodate the existing business and the growth they're expecting from the reconfiguration of the inside of the building. And I just wanted to say as well, we did work extensively with Rob and staff after we had the 2 neighborhood meetings. We wanted to make sure that we accommodated all the concerns that the neighbors had and work within the boundaries that the town would allow us. So we feel that we went from 1, as Rob said, to 9 conditions. And we're hoping that that is satisfactory and that we, like I said, we really worked hard to get the neighbors and staff on board so that everybody was happy. I don't think we have anything to add. We're good. We are here to answer any questions if you all have any. Okay? And thank you.
Thank you. I'll start to my right this time for questions of the staff or the applicant.
Sure, thanks. Maybe the staff, I think the condition was that the storm water mitigation would be for the new development?
Correct.
Okay, so that is just that, so it's not the entire property, it's just that small piece of the parking?
It is, it would relate to anything new that's proposed on the the whole site. So if they propose changes on the existing part of the site, it would be applicable to those changes in any impervious surface that those changes generate.
Okay, so help me understand, because the property was developed in 2003, and I think maybe the stormwater laws were or rules, regulations in the town were a little bit different. So if I'm a raindrop and I fall on the new parking lot, it falls under this new condition. But if I'm a raindrop on the old parking lot, I can go wherever I want to go, or, I mean, I'm trying to simplify it, but.
Any new impervious surface, and there would have to be a development plan for any additional parking to occur. That development plan would address stormwater, would look at the amount of increased impervious surface, and would require them to treat that additional impervious surface.
Okay, so the treatment is on the additional impervious surface than what's there already, than the pre-existing condition?
Correct.
Right, okay.
It's for new development.
For the new development, okay. Question I have is, the applicant's proposing a 20-foot type A buffer, and I appreciate the applicant working closely with the neighbors and trying to address a lot of the concerns they had on lighting and et cetera. And I know that there was some stormwater questions that are being addressed by the town and some effort they're doing there. That type, I mean, just that 20-foot type A buffer, I mean, how does that measure with, let's say, other commercial to residential transition? Is that like what we, because I just don't remember all the buffers, looking for staff to help me out. Is 20 feet the typical? Is it generous? Is it, you know?
We see type A buffers, they can go in as little as 10 feet. We typically see them in 20 or 30-foot areas. Sometimes you'll have them, sometimes we'll have streetscapes on purely residential developments where they'll go up to 50 feet. But we can work with the evergreen material that's required in as little as 10 feet.
Okay, all right, thank you. And one last question I have, and it really doesn't have anything to do with this, with the applicant here, but, and maybe this is, I can take this offline, but I was just struck that there's a cell tower on a piece of land that's zone R40. And so I guess I had missed that somewhere, that we could put cell towers on property that's zoned R40, but is that I was just curious about that.
Yes. So as long as the applicable setbacks can be met.
Okay.
So, yes.
All right. Not that I'm going to put one in my backyard anytime soon. I'm just curious. All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Steve?
Just a quick one. It might have been in here and I missed it. How many spaces can they have today? Are they above, below, at?
That's a good question. Today, for the amount of floor area that they have on the site, 79 spaces are required. They have 74 spaces on the site. So when this was approved in 2003, they requested and obtained an administrative reduction of just over 6%. So they're 5 spaces below the requirement. They can be, at the staff level, they can request and with justification be granted up to a 15% reduction or as much as a 30% overage. They'd have to provide, justification for that. If they were granted a 30% overage, the most that we could do administratively, that would allow them to go to 102 spaces, so that could be an increase of up to 28 spaces. That's the maximum scenario of added parking without more floor area. To go beyond that 30%, they would have to go to council for approval, and that would be a quasi-judicial request.
Okay. And I couldn't help but notice in that picture that all the parking spaces were full, so that was well done.
Good time.
Is that it? That's it. Ryan?
I don't have any.
All right. If there's no more questions for the staff or for the applicant, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case number 18-REZ-18 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
No, I mean, to me, this is a really good example. We're going to retain and grow an existing business. They're going to add to their business without expanding their building. And I think they've really done a great job working with the neighborhood to to mitigate all the concerns.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the site, and parking is already a problem there. They're talking about some internal expansion, so it makes sense that they need more parking. And like he noted, going through all the additional conditions that were added to accommodate the neighbors and the concerns, I think is a good example of the way we like to see businesses and developers in Cary operate.
Anyone else have any discussion they'd like to make on this?
I just agree with Steve's and Chuck's comments. I think it's good collaboration with the neighborhood as well as good expansion of a business in a very limited way.
Yeah, and I'll just add my 2 cents to it. I mean, full marks for the applicant here. I mean, 2 neighborhood meetings, each one produces zoning conditions to meet the neighbors' requests. What they hear from the public hearing produces zoning conditions. I mean, that's how you work with people. So bravo. Even though that's not what we review here, we just review whether the plan is consistent.
But it makes us happier.
Yeah. So if there's no other discussion, would all those in favor of 18 REZ 18 please say aye? Aye. Any opposed say no. That motion also carries unanimously. We are now on to our third and final case of the evening. Ms. Grannon's with us, and it is 18 REZ 27 Weston PDD. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Board. For your request, for your consideration tonight is a request to apply a PDD amendment to a portion of the Weston PDD located at 3001 Weston Parkway on 5.32 acres. Subject property is located on the south side of Weston Parkway and north of the Wessex subdivision. This is what the property looks like looking south from Weston Parkway. But what you don't see behind these trees is that the site is developed currently with a existing building, 52,700 square foot office building. The applicant is proposing a PDD amendment. So the current zoning is planned development district. The uses permitted by right in the Weston PDD are shown here. They include office, retail, clubs, a number of other office and institutional uses. No change is proposed to any of the permitted uses on the subject property, even though we are aware that the applicant, Red Storm Entertainment, is proposing to relocate from another site in Weston to this property. But the only changes that they're proposing are to increase the parking. And as a result of their proposed parking expansion increase comes a request to make some modifications to the buffers. So I'll go through those for you. And this is another aerial view that helps illustrate where those buffers are proposed. But they're looking at taking the 50-foot streetscape along Weston Parkway and reducing a portion of that streetscape to 30 feet, still maintaining a 50-foot streetscape at one corner. They're proposing to specify a 10-foot perimeter buffer along the western edge of the property to accommodate parking on this side of the property and to not have a vehicular use setback on that side of the property. They're also proposing to specify a 20-foot buffer on the eastern side of the property. And then where there's an existing 50-foot existing buffer on the southern property line, that's where they're asking to enhance that to a type A standard. So when this first came in and we first met with the applicant and we looked at the surrounding conditions and just talking through that, we asked, had they considered things like parking deck, structured parking on the property? Had they considered possibly looking at reducing the buffer over on the east side of the property where it was 25 feet and the ordinance only calls for 10 between uses like this? And they explained that they had some topo challenges here. They did talk to us about increasing this rear buffer. And then they pointed something else out that was interesting. There's an existing utility easement that runs parallel to this 30-foot streetscape. And they explained to us that this is already devoid of vegetation. So even though it's a 50-foot buffer, only 30 feet of it has been planted and vegetated. So that was something that we took into consideration as they made this proposal. They did explore different options. So again, just to recap, reducing a portion of that streetscape from 50 to 30 feet, and then the other conditions we described. They've also offered 2 zoning conditions since this case first started. That was to construct the street side trail along Weston Parkway, and that no building size increase would be made as part of this request. There are no stream impacts or floodways according to Cary's most recent GIS maps, and field determination of that will be required if they do expand this parking lot. Weston Parkway has been built to its ultimate build-out standard. It's a 4-lane median divided thoroughfare. There is a current Go Cary route along Weston Parkway and several routes in close proximity to this site, several transit stops. As I mentioned, the applicant has offered to construct the street side trail along Weston Parkway. There's an existing sidewalk there today that's only about a 5-foot sidewalk, and so they would propose to put in a 10-foot trail. The material that would be in that trail has not been determined yet. That's something, whether it's asphalt or concrete, that's something we'll look at the time of development plan review to see what fits with the other trails in that area. And this illustrates for you where that existing utility easement is and where the proposed parking expansion is. And the applicants helped illustrate this as well, showing you what the existing conditions look like today, where they would like to add additional parking spaces. And then this rendering or illustration shows how they can supplement that streetscape buffer to a type B standard. So this is indicative of the type of evergreen shrubs that we would accept as part of a development plan coming forward to enhance the performance of that buffer. The neighborhood meeting was held on December 11th, 2018. There were 4 nearby property owners in attendance. Concerns were regarding traffic, hours of operation, noise and light impacts, gaps in the existing rear buffer. We got 3 emails from nearby property owners with similar concerns, and then at the town council public hearing, there was 1 property owner who spoke, and that was the owner of property to the south of the subject property, who again expressed concerns about the buffer performance. And then the council had questions for staff about buffer performance, parking requirements, lighting requirements, things of that nature. This shows you where the southern buffer is located, and this is the home of the Wessex property owner who spoke with her concerns about the case. What she learned that evening at the public hearing is that staff had conducted a site visit and looked at the conditions that were part of the 1998 development plan when the offices of Kimley Horn were approved. And at that time, it did show that per the site plan, the buffer should have been performing at a type A standard, and there were evergreen shrubs, in fact, wax myrtles that were required. So our development compliance team saw there were some gaps, notified the applicant. They're working on that, and in addition to addressing the current needs, they've also offered a zoning condition that it would be a type A standard. So this shows you that buffer from the parking lot view and the opportunity again for them to do some enhancements in that buffer area. The subject property is located in an employment mixed-use campus according to Cary's growth framework map. This is where we would typically see higher, more urban intensities, a mixture of uses, either vertical or horizontal mix of uses, buildings pulled up closer to streets, a walkable realm. So the intensity proposed here is in keeping with the Imagine Cary community plan. In our analysis, the work policies are identified because this parking increase would support an existing firm. The higher intensities are encouraged, and then the enhancements along that southern buffer would help to reduce the parking impacts and the site lighting. And the proposal also applies to the engaged chapter of the Cary community plan by the condition to offer that multi-use street side trail. So staff finds that the request is consistent with the Imagine Cary community plan because it addresses the work, shape, and engaged chapters, and because of the conditions proposed by the applicant. And this concludes staff's presentation. The applicant's here for some comments, and then we'll both be available for your questions.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Brian Kisko. I'm with Hager Smith Design. With me tonight is Steve Reed, Executive Vice President of Red Storm Entertainment. I just want to say thank you for your time tonight, and thank you to Deborah and staff. They've done a great job of helping us to navigate the PDD amendment process, so we're grateful for their help. Excuse me. Red Storm is a video game development company, and they've been located here in Cary for a while. Currently, they're leasing space in Center Green, just about a mile up the road from this location along Weston Parkway. They wanted to become owners and didn't want to be leasing anymore, so they wanted to kind of expand their roots and have some permanent roots here in Cary. This was a great opportunity for them to do that, to purchase the vacant building here on Weston and to bring it up to today's standards. But because of the building being built in 1989 originally and going through a couple additions and multiple phases, there are some inefficiencies with the layout of the site and with the parking. And so Red Storm is looking for additional parking to accommodate their existing needs and also for future growth. With their business model and the way they operate, they don't need a lot of square footage per employee. They don't need a lot of big corner offices. So that's why we're looking for some more parking. As part of this request, which we've already kind of talked about a little bit, but looking for an increase in parking over the maximum permitted by code. And as part of that 50-foot streetscape buffer being reduced to a 30-foot buffer, that visual character that is important along Weston will remain intact. That visual character will still be there if this is approved. And we had talked about the water lines there, the existing utility easement. So because of that, it's prevented a lot of planting in that area, so the parking there won't be disturbing a lot of the existing vegetation. And as Deborah had mentioned, we have looked at a lot of additional scenarios for this, and we believe that this is the best alternative with the least amount of impacts due to topography. We had looked at a parking deck, and we believe this is the best route to go. We did have the neighborhood meeting, and there were some concerns expressed along the southern boundary, and Red Storm is committed to 50-foot type A buffer along that to address those concerns, and is also committed to building the multi-use trail along Weston Parkway. And as part of this, if this is approved, we will still comply with a maximum of 70% of impervious for the site. We will still be under that threshold. And no building expansion is being part of this amendment. That's all I have. Thank you for your time, and we're available for any questions.
Thank you.
No, staff covered all mine during the presentation.
Excellent. Mary Jo?
Just curious about the utility easement. So there are no restrictions as far as what can be done with that space? It doesn't have to be kept clear for whatever reason?
You can put parking on it. You can put travel lanes on it, but you can't plant anything with a root system on it. So no trees can be planted in a utility system because, you know, the roots could impact those water lines.
Interesting.
But if we had to get out and tear up a parking space to access that, we would be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Chuck?
No questions.
I'm good.
I just have a couple questions. Are there other sections on Weston that have trail versus sidewalk yet? I'm just curious.
Not in this vicinity, no.
Okay,
So this would, yeah, the town is working toward that. We want that.
Okay.
So what we would require typically is an easement. So the applicant's gone above and beyond by offering to actually construct the trail.
Mm-hmm. One other question is, I appreciate the applicant addressing the concerns of the neighbor to the south. I'm sure they appreciate it. I was at that site yesterday. So now I understand why also there was all that dirt there, because there was the easement. I was wondering, I was like, yeah, because you almost have a type A buffer with all the vegetation, but you have that whole area. One question I have is, because you're also looking to reduce the buffer onto the west side, has been any feedback from the property owner on that side, which is also a commercial development, but in terms of any feedback on reducing that buffer?
I can speak to what staff has heard and then let the applicant speak to that as well. This is actually not a reduction, but rather just specifying, because the ordinance would only require 10 feet on each side. What the reduction is for that vehicular setback.
Oh, for the setback, okay.
Yeah, so there was a 25-foot buffer in there per an old site plan, but the ordinance only requires a 10-foot buffer.
Okay.
But I'll let the applicant speak to this as well, but staff has not heard anything from the adjacent property owner.
Okay.
So my name is Steve Reed. I'm the managing director for Red Storm. We've been in communication with the neighbor on the western side, and there's an original agreement from dating when whoever owned the first set of properties. So the pathway that exists on that western border is access lane rights. So if it were to ever be extended, there's an existing agreement that it could be extended and for the use of driving back and forth. And we've been in discussion with the neighbor to see if they have any future plans for that, whether they'd want to voluntarily have a new agreement set with us, because there's a ravine drop off immediately to that back corner that looks like there's never going to be any use. But we're not making any of this contingent on that. There's just an existing agreement.
Okay, thank you very much.
Anything else?
No.
Anyone else for the staff, for the applicant? Any motions come to mind?
I'll make a motion. I move that the board find case 18 REZ 27 is consistent with the comprehensive plan and all other applicable plans for the reasons set forth in the staff report, presentation, and discussion by the Planning and Zoning Board.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion?
I thought staff did a great job presenting this case. Excited that a local business is staying there and really setting down some roots by having some ownership, and it made me think about office layouts back in 1989, what our standard was versus where we have today, where it's much more module, pods, et cetera. Not everybody gets a 10 by 10 office, and so it makes sense that this is kind of coming into the 21st century of our old requirements back then in terms of parking, what we have now. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is pretty much a no-brainer. I think in general with office in Cary, especially as companies become more agile, better use of space, parking is definitely becoming something that's more predominant. And these are the kind of cases that we're seeing, and we'll probably start to see more of. I think on paper, reducing buffers is scary. It's kind of a bad thing, but given the staff's presentation and the explanation, it totally makes sense. I think this is a good use of the property, and I definitely think it's good for the rear buffer. That's actually, property owner is going to actually end up ahead, I think, by what you guys are going to do down there. So definitely in support of it.
Any other discussion on this motion? Then would all those in favor of, I forgot the number already, 27? 18 REZ 27, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. That motion also carries unanimously. We are 3 for 3 this evening. Any no or old business to come up with? If not, then a motion to adjourn would be the...
I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of adjournment say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. We are adjourned.
This has been a production of Cary TV. Visit the Town of Cary's website at townofcary.org.